I grew up with a father who was an individual investor at a time when individual investors didn't exist. If we don't take drastic action, there will be consequences. So if it ain't broke, break it. The worst thing I can do is have a table of people like me sitting around.
Welcome to the Digital Empowerment Podcast, and today I'm super excited to be joined by Ralph. Ralph, I'm going to hand over to you and let you do a little bit of an introduction for everyone.
Sure. And thank you, Kieran. So my name is Ralph Groce. I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Wonderful town, although it felt to me like a pair of clothes that didn't fit very well, if you've ever had that experience. And so I never felt comfortable in Pittsburgh. I fled as quickly as I possibly could, and I purposely use the word fled. Went to university at Boston University in Boston. I was advised by a math professor of mine that I respected in high school that Boston was the academic mecca of the country, the United States, and possibly the world. And it turned out to be exactly that for me and was a magnificently transformative experience. I did my undergraduate degree in finance at Boston University, as well as a graduate degree in urban studies and economics. I left there and went to my dream place, New York, imagining that I would work on Wall Street and make a lot of money and then go into politics and all sorts of things. Didn't quite work out that way, but I did finally make it to New York, did finally make it to Wall Street, and now I'm doing some pretty interesting things. I started my career in financial services and bank operations. I then left to start a company called Groce Profit. The best way to describe it, it was Robin Hood 20 some odd years ago. Exact same concept. And unfortunately, I was not able to raise capital enough beyond my own savings to make the venture go and work. And I'll come back to that. There's a very pointed story in that, and I'll come back to that in a second. So I came back to corporate America, but instead of going into operations, the operations side of banking, I went into the technology side of banking. One of the lessons I learned from my experience was I thought 24 years ago or so that technology was going to become ubiquitous and that everything about life as we know it was going to be transformed by technology. And time is proving me out. And I think we are only seeing the tip of the iceberg with regards to how transformative technology is going to be in our lives from this point forward. I am a former CIO at several very large financial services institutions. I have recently left my Wells Fargo. I am presently writing a book talking about the challenges that I see in our country, in the United States, the responsibility we have to the world to solve them in a progressive, humane, equitable kind of way. Challenging the leadership, irrespective of political parties. It's not a political book in that regard, but challenging the leadership that we have in place to stop putting aside and kicking this can down the road and to take courageous stances to solve these issues. And suggesting strongly that I'm the kind of leader that could do that. I'm also joining a company called Scroobius and getting back to my first venture. This platform is intended to provide underrepresented groups the opportunity to access venture capital in ways that they can't and haven't today. I heard a presentation by a renowned commercial real estate investor who said that in 2023, there was $82 trillion worth of VC capital available, of which less than 1% was shared with ventures headed and started by women and people of color. And he called it a national imperative and a threat to our democracy here in the United States as we know it. And so this platform is intended to help bridge that gap between these incredibly innovative founders and investors who could and should be interested in the ideas that these groups are bringing forward. So, and by the way, in my spare time, I have an international art gallery on Martha's Vineyard, and we just did an exhibition that we're participating in at the behest of the European Cultural Center in Venice. So, just a couple of things that are going on.
I thought I was busy. No. So brilliant. I had to write a few notes there just to make sure I don't miss anything. So brilliant. I have a few points I definitely want to go back to. So you mentioned Robin Hood and the story there. So maybe that's a good place to start.
Sure. So the name of the venture was called Gross Profit, sort of a play on my name. And I had been doing research for the better part of 15 to 18 months on capital investment. I grew up with a father who was an individual investor at a time when individual investors didn't exist in the United States, because the market is very much driven by information. And there was a lack of information available to individual investors. You had, daily newspapers that were printed once in the morning, afternoon edition, and an evening edition. And that was pretty much it. And so understanding or having access to information that drove market and market valuations and market fluctuations and volatility was almost impossible. And to be an African American and invested in the market was also something that was unheard of. But my father was obsessed with it and drilled it into me, even though I was not particularly interested in that at the time. But that's how I grew up and became, after a time, became interested in the market myself. One of the things that my research turned up, interestingly enough, that if you look at just the African-American community here in the United States, that at the time, if we were a separate country, we'd have the 17th largest GDP in the world. And yet only about $35 billion was invested in equity markets. And so what I begin to look at is what's known as market segmentation, meaning looking at different products that were targeting different demographic groups. For instance, here in the United States, television is something that is highly segmented. So back in the day, if you will, a new broadcast network came out called the CW. And if you were an advertiser who wanted to target 16 to 24 white females at 9 o'clock in the evening, you advertised on the CW because of the programming that they had. And so I began to think, what if I could create a platform, an investment platform that was educational, had educational content, made it very simple for people to understand and met them where they were with regards to saving and investing, and then provided a call to action and provided the means and the tools to actually take action. And again, that was gross profit. And we were looking at segmentation, looking at different demographic groups, because even to this day, saving and investing tends to target white men who think about saving and investing in a much more transactional kind of way. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing is absolutely wrong, but it leaves women, and in the United States, women are 51% of the population. And when you start talking about money in motion and the fact that women's life expectancy is longer, you're talking about money that is going to be going to women from men. And so providing a vehicle that educates them about, how to save and how to invest. In the African American community, you have a lot of single parent homes who live paycheck to paycheck. How do you get them understanding so they can break that cycle and pass along this information to their children? So it was about meeting people where they were, providing them the information, providing them the tools, and the means to actually take action to affect what we now know as income inequality and the wealth gap. People weren't talking about it in that context 20 some odd years ago, but that's exactly what this was looking to create.
Again, I'm thinking of financial education today. Like, it's still with young people, and as you say, so much of the population doesn't know how to manage their money. It's not been, I'm thinking of schools and how we educate young people. It's just not being shared, and people aren't getting a really good start. So you can understand how it ends up staying with a certain part of the population, which 100% is beyond unfair. So incredible. And you were very early then in pushing this, but obviously it's a clear thread that's stayed with you the whole way through your career, even back to your book and the concept of that. So do tell us a little bit more about that.
So there's a couple of things, dimensions to this whole thing. First off, my own personal philosophy, and I think everyone should have a personal philosophy, is that I believe we speak our reality into existence. Didn't know that concept when I was 4 years old and starting kindergarten, but that's a principle that I have lived my life by, and it's something that over and over and over and time and again has proven to be true, at least for me. So first day of school, I'm being asked, as all my classmates were, what do you want to be when you grow up? And when it came time, my turn to answer that question, I said, President of the United States. And so, not that I even understood what President of the United States was, but that's what I said. And interestingly enough, over time, that declaration has never left me. And, in the introduction to the book, I talk about that, if I had written this several years ago, it probably would have come from a different place. But today, as I look at where we are as a country and where we are as a world, it feels to me we have never been as divided, and we have, but we've never been as divided with the kinds of consequences that division can create. In the United States, we have more guns than we have people. We have war in Europe, and leaders are talking about the use of nuclear weapons in a casual kind of way. We have climate change, whether people want to believe that or not, and it's very real. And we are entering a place where if we don't take drastic action in the next several years, there will be consequences that will be difficult to undo and will change life as we know it. And the kinds of options and solutions that we can put in place will be severely diminished by the fact that the world and the earth has gotten hotter than it's ever been. And so these are the kinds of intractable issues that are facing us, and they're coming at a time when, at least here in the United States, the level of leadership is not rising to the issues that we have at hand. They're just not. And we can wait for someone, whoever that is, to fix these things. It's someone's responsibility. It's someone's problem. It's someone's issue. And we can wait to do that. But we are literally running out of time. So the title of the book is We Have Nothing to Lose, a call to action, a dark optimist call to action. So when I was growing up, I described myself as a dark optimist. It is as convoluted and contradictory as the moniker would seem to be. Dark on the one hand, an acknowledgement of the extraordinarily challenging, intractable kinds of challenges that we face, but yet clinging to optimism and believing that failure and not overcoming these challenges is completely unacceptable and something that we cannot afford to fail. Hence the moniker. And so that's what the book is about.
Incredible. No, actually, I have to say that I would echo a lot of your sentiment there around our leaders and leaders in many countries. I think not just maybe the US, but many countries around the world. I don't know what's happening. I don't know, and you don't see change, and you don't see that there's going to be a direction or a future. It seems to be more of the same and the same and the same. I don't know how we're going to improve things, and you're right around the shocking news that we hear all the time. There doesn't seem to be any improvement. So I don't know what we're waiting for, but yeah, we'll have to see. So maybe your book will have some answers. So we'll have to read that. You'd mentioned as well about transformation and technology, and it's super interesting for me. Of course, you're talking about you've a long history of this in your previous roles, and what you thought about technology many years ago. And it just feels that with this new age of AI, things are again changing. I'd love to hear your thoughts on digital transformation and the journey and what you've seen in your career.
So, we've seen various flavors of this. I believe this is all coming to, fruition, and things that we have not even yet thought about that are going to be equally as transformational. I'll start with, and I'm a student of Ray Kurzweil, who is a futurist. I believe he now works with Google. And one of the things that he said, he wrote a book called The Singularity is Near. And one of the guiding principles of the book is he talks about the velocity and the exponential rate of change. And as human beings, we experience time in a very linear kind of way, minute to minute, hour to hour, week to week, et cetera, et cetera. And we don't think of time, which it probably is, more as a circular kind of thing, a blob, where there isn't a beginning and there isn't an end. It's just time. And so he talks about this accelerated rate of change that within the next 100 years, we will experience what has been historically 1,000 years worth of transformational change within the next 100 years. And that is profoundly consequential in terms of how disruptive that's going to be, how transformational that's going to be, how in the wrong hands, potentially deadly that could be. But it's coming. Several years ago, we talked about cloud, and we talked about big data, and we talked about digital transformation, and now we're talking about AI. So there'll be a next big thing coming, all of that. But what he talks about, and what I believe is that next big thing, one of the next big things that are coming, is what he calls the amalgamation of human technology and human biology. And when we start to put those things together, so now AI is something that lives outside of us, that we worry. Imagine the day when that will reside within us and we'll have the ability. So already you see with Apple Vision Pro, the idea that you can put this thing on and you can interact with your computer through your eyes and hand gestures. That is going to shrink down to the size of our glasses. That will shrink down to the size of contact lenses. Our AirPods and our earbuds will be something that will be constantly talking to us and monitoring us. Our watches will be devices that will, monitor and talk to us and inform us about the world around us. The clothes we wear will be monitoring kinds of things. And it won't be long before we begin to either ingest things and or put those things inside of us. So we'll put chips in our brain to augment our brain capability and activity. I was at a conference several years ago that headed by a Google futurist, Google engineer, who talked about, children of the future having 100 times the IQ of human beings that we have today. We'll extend our lives. Your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren will easily live until they're 100 years old. We're already seeing things. I saw something on 60 Minutes a couple of years ago where we are replacing appendages and now are being able to move those appendages just with our thoughts. It's self-driving cars, which is, still working on doing that. But, here in the United States, in an age when it's really difficult to hurt someone with a car, we continue to kill about 40,000 people a year because we don't know what we're doing when we're driving a car. We're doing everything else but driving the car. So, cars that drive themselves, traffic jams because somebody, hits their brake, and the butterfly effect of that will all go away. The billions of dollars of waste that causes. I mean, we haven't even begun to touch that space exploration. So it's amazing what is coming. And then I read a book also called Wired for War that talks about innovation. The genesis of innovation has been struggle in human civilization. And so countries that have fought, or the reason why they innovate is because they're innovating to win. And it's certainly the industrial military complex in the United States is certainly the father of a lot of innovation and technical innovation in this country. So you haven't even talked about what that could mean and the deadliness of that. Autonomous weapons platforms that no longer have to be informed by or managed by human beings, that'll be identifying high value targets for better or worse and taking action and determining, on their own when they will do whatever it is they've been asked to do.
Incredible when you're listening all through that. It's exciting, but also scary. Yes. It'll have also a massive impact on the financial service industry as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and one of the things that in my space that I was attempting to bring forward, some success, some not, because it's when you start talking about these kinds of capabilities, at the turn of the century, anyone who was, owned a horse and was using a horse for transportation, you had a carriage business and all of a sudden this horseless thing is coming along. You're not the one most excited about, this what's coming next. So when you think about, areas like underwriting, I was saying 6 or 7 years ago when I was with a financial services organization that, did underwriting. We don't really need underwriters. I can create an AI that will determine, we'll feed it models, create large models, and we'll feed it information, case study, and how we have conducted our business, the type of business we've written over the last 20, 30 years. This is the business we want. These are the decisions we've made. And this thing will determine on its own whether it fits the profile of the business that we want to do. And we will simply have a few folks around that will interrogate the results and ensure that the results are consistent with the choices we would have made if we were humans, except we would have taken days and weeks to make them. This thing will make them in the span of about 5 minutes, if that. We're already seeing that. We can use it in our judicial system, potentially. Going back to financial services, underwriting, mortgages, loans, credit cards, auto, all of that could just simply be AI driven. Reconciliation, trade reconciliation, we're already have already automated, trading. That's already gone the way of AI and will continue to only get better and better in terms of the speed, clarity, settlement. We're now moving towards same day settlement on trades, all of that managed by machines and computers, no human intervention needed or necessary. So, it's going to be incredibly disruptive in terms of now what we have to make sure, and this goes back to, what we talked about with regards to who is participating in these financial services. We have to make sure that we have a robust, diverse group of people at the table to interrogate and ensure that these models are appropriately diverse, that they aren't biased, that they aren't hallucinating, and that the results that they produce are based on objective facts that don't mimic the systemic bias that we already have in our society today. Because once that happens and we carry those biases from the physical world into the virtual world, these machines and these algorithms, they don't take breaks, they don't take vacations, they don't take days off. We will see, and if we're not careful, they're black boxes. So we will just see them churning out decisions that don't reflect what many of us claim we value with regards to fair and equitable access, outcomes, and those kinds of things. So,
yes. And with all this crazy stuff happening in the world and your depth of experience, what advice would you give to aspiring innovators and entrepreneurs looking to make a difference in their field today?
So, two things, and I've certainly done this within my own family. I think every endeavor moving forward is going to involve some level of technology. I don't care what it is. If you're going to be a dancer, there's going to be technology there. If you're going to be an artist, there's going to be technology there. And so having a understanding of technology, I think, is critically important to being successful in the world moving forward. And certainly, this ability, I did a commencement speech and I came across this definition of literacy in the 21st century, the ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn. So you are going to have to be flexible. You're going to have to become a student, a lifelong student, and be able to reinvent yourself as this 100,000 years worth of change happens in the span of what's left of this century. And the second thing is, as an inventor, as whatever you are, almost irrespective of whether you believe in, what we call in the United States DE&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion, irrespective of whether you believe in that, companies and ventures that have a diverse population of people involved produce better outcomes. I'm a student of innovation. I've had patents. I'm pretty smart guy. I guess I've got several degrees. The worst thing I can do is have a table of people like me sitting around. I need a diverse set of influences, voices, perspectives. I mean, Kieran, you and I, this is diversity. And I wasn't raised in the UK. You bring a perspective that I simply don't have. You have a way of looking at this picture that I don't. And you, as a consequence of that, you will see things that I can't and that I won't. And the outcome, however good it might be with my perspective, could be so much better and so much more enhanced and so much more transformative, productive, and useful if I had your perspective at the table. And so we shouldn't tolerate that. We should embrace that. I've had the opportunity to travel all over the world, and what I've seen is, there are other democracies, there are other market economies. What really separates the United States is our diversity. And the thing that we fight most is our diversity, but it's our secret sauce. We're able to do things and create things because we've got this plethora of voices and perspectives that no one else has. And when we we embrace it, begrudgingly, kicking and screaming, but if we ever just totally leaned in, oh my God, the things that we could do are just extraordinary. So, again, embrace technology in everything you do, and in everything you do, seek out diversity.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, who's been some of the most influential mentors? You mentioned a few names, and I was just wondering how they shaped your careers.
So I'd have to start with my parents. First, I like to describe them as tiger parents on steroids. So they're, if you're familiar with the concept of tiger parents, their desire for excellence was unrelenting and uncompromising. And then they took it to a level of, that was very interesting. I was raised in a way that, my parents didn't really tell me what to do. They expected me to figure it out and then get it right. And that helped me develop as a critical thinker. And it helped me understand and deal with ambiguity. So the ability to look at a blank wall and not be confused or bedeviled by it, but to see the extraordinary level of opportunity. If there are no rules, then, oh my God, I get to make this up. This is, hey, this is the best thing ever. I get to make stuff up. So, but that came from how I was raised. I had the pleasure, although I didn't always think of it at that time that way, of playing collegiate basketball at Boston University for a Hall of Fame coach named Rick Pitino. He's still coaching. He's now at St. John's. And, beyond the X's and O's, and he's one of the best at that, his philosophies on life were what I really took away from that experience. One of the things he used to say is, talent doesn't always prevail. And that has on both sides of the ledger. When you find yourself the most talented, just because you are doesn't mean you're going to prevail. And when you find yourself in situations where you aren't the most talented, that doesn't mean that you can't win. If you're willing to, in both cases, if you're goal driven, if you're consistent, if you're disciplined, you can prevail. And if you're not, even with talent, you may not prevail. He talked about if it ain't broke, break it. And so that notion of, constantly in a changing, ever changing world, to think that you can, tread water, that you've gotten to a good place, you've gotten to a good thing, you've won, and that you're just going to stay there is fallacy. The world is constantly changing. I'm a licensed scuba diver, and we do this thing called drift diving, where you dive and, the boat will tell you, well, I'll meet you two miles someplace else. And the first time I did that, I'm like, how would you do that? We're just going straight down and come straight back up. But you know what? 2 miles later, we came up someplace other than when we started, unaware of the current carrying us. But that's the way the world moves. We're not perceptible to the changes that are happening around us. But that doesn't mean it isn't happening. It just means that we don't know it. And we're not necessarily perceiving it. And so to think that it ain't broke, let's just keep it going. And that somehow that standard of excellence is going to be, acceptable a week from now, a year from now, 10 years from now, it won't. And many people are surprised by that. So if it ain't broke, break it. And that's been a tenet of my life, and reinventing myself over and over and over again. Just because I achieved that level of standard of excellence yesterday means that, tomorrow I get to break it and start all over again and redefine that. So, those are a couple of people that have been incredibly instrumental in my life, and many others, too many to even count. But I try to take something from every encounter that I have with people, and open myself up to lessons that I can learn from each one of these encounters. And when you do that, you can benefit from a lot of interactions.
Incredible. No, thank you for sharing that. Great stories. I'd love to know about the art gallery, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I know how it, from what I understood, looking at the website, it's taken art and technology and advocacy and wrote it all into one. So I'd love to know what inspired you with that, and what you're hoping to achieve.
So I always knew after the first venture that I would, I guess I can call myself a serial entrepreneur now. I knew that I was going to try again. Didn't know exactly what that was, but I'll try again. My wife and I started collecting art. She has an art history background, even though she too worked in technology. She was at Sanofi Pasteur and was the global co-head of digital marketing at Sanofi Pasteur. After a career initially in art, then in interior design, and then selling commercial furniture. So we began collecting art maybe 15 years or so ago. We built our house in a way that allows us to feature and show art in a compelling kind of way. Then had an opportunity to buy some property on Martha's Vineyard, and it was a former art gallery. And I decided to, one, I was interested in the real estate, which is very valuable here on the vineyard, and decided that, I'll keep the gallery, but we rebranded it. And so one of the things that I took away from my first venture, not that I didn't have this perspective, but I really wanted to accentuate it in this, and that is a clear vision and mission statement of what this business was going to be. And just as importantly, Stephen Jobs talked about this, is that, what we weren't going to be. So here's what we were going to do, and here's the things that we wouldn't do. And so that we be very clear as we move forward about where we stood, who we were, and what we were attempting to achieve with the work that we were doing. The gallery is named Knowhere, Knowhere, an intentional slant towards the know being knowledge, and knowledge being a forerunner of enlightenment. So knowledge leading to enlightenment. And we wanted to utilize this platform to inform people, and use art to inform people, and to tell stories that would um, challenge them, that would cause them to question, that would perhaps make them feel uncomfortable, but would leave them potentially viewing the world differently after having experienced the nowhere than they were when they first walked in, leading to this concept that everywhere leads to nowhere, as a marketing kind of pitch. And we've been successful with that. We had an exhibition, I think now 2 years ago, called by Fine Women in Print. And it was a phenomenal exhibition. And one of the pieces, it still sticks with me. It was there was a brand here in the United States, Aunt Jemima syrup, and the whole name comes from a period of time when it was very challenging, race relationships and all those kinds of things. And it was a bottle. The artist had created this print of this woman, African-American woman, nursing a white baby with a ball of cotton in the top of the jug. And she talked about, we did a live presentation interview with the artist, and she talked about the cotton came by way of a white woman who had actually went out and picked the cotton. So that was kind of heady. And then this depiction of this Black woman, Black nanny, nursing this white baby, I mean, it had a profound impact on me. You can imagine the impact that it had on our patrons who came and, studied that and looked at it over it. Am I seeing what I'm seeing? Is this really what I'm seeing? And then asking questions about the story behind it. So yes, we want to be profitable. Yes, we want to sell. But to us, success is defined by creating that experience and creating that environment where people can come, where people can learn, where people can experience, where people can have conversations with members of their family or with other patrons in the gallery about what it is they're looking at and what it means to them and how it's impacting them. We're also introducing elements of virtual reality in the space and augmented reality, so people who don't have the privilege and the pleasure of actually touring the gallery here in person can see that online. And then we want to bring in blockchain and create smart contracts that will follow the pieces for the life of the piece, and potentially provide the opportunity for artists to participate in secondary and tertiary sales of their work in ways that they don't today. Unlike music, an artist creates a piece, it appreciates in value, it moves on. The artist doesn't participate in that secondary and resell. And so there's an opportunity to potentially rectify that, as well as ensure the authenticity of the piece for the entire life and duration of the piece. And so that's, and then because I believe in feng shui and tying dots together, we also have conversations with patrons, some of whom are first-time buyers and first-time collectors who are looking at the prices of these things and saying, but we talk about it like, look, any diversified portfolio and effort to build wealth should include art, because of choosing the right piece and the right artist and the opportunity to see that appreciate in value. You want to diversify your portfolio as you're building wealth. And art should be a part of that diversified portfolio. So we're back to where we started with regards to all of these pieces coming together: gross profit, economic inequality and the wealth gap, and then changing hearts and minds with through art.
Fascinating. It just absolutely blew my mind. I've got loads more questions, but I'm very conscious of your time, and I'm sure if anyone wants to connect and find out more about the art gallery, they can obviously visit the website. But what's the best way for anyone to reach out or to find out more about what you're doing, what you're involved in, and the art?
Sure. So I am building a website. It's called thedarkoptimist.com, all one word. And so this concept of dark optimism, I think that's going to be the banner under which we'll talk about art, we'll talk about the book, but most importantly, we'll talk about changing the world and positively impacting the world around us, and the opportunity, and dare I say the responsibility now that people have to do something. The book purposely does not go into a lot of answers, because one of the issues that I find, at least in our country, is the minute you say, for instance, gun control, and let's take, you automatically alienate 50% of, or some huge part of and I want those folks at the table. So I would pose the question and the challenge in a different way. Who here, raise your hand if you think it's okay to walk into a school loaded for war and shoot everybody? Raise your hand if you think that's okay. And I would imagine that not many, if any, hands would raise. Okay, so nobody here thinks that's okay. What are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? How are we going to stop that? Now, I certainly have some ideas, because I got ideas about everything. But let's bring that diverse points of view and perspective around the table, talk about it, and do something. That's the key. We are not going to accept these problems as they are and not do something. We are going to solve these problems, because we have a responsibility to ourselves, to our children, to our children's children, to address these issues and find the courage to do so. So the whole notion of Dark Optimist, you'll be able to see what I'm doing, see what I'm into, talk about the book, offer, suggestions of your own, and certainly, get in touch with me and tell me what an idiot I am for doing any of this. And you see where we go.
I somehow doubt. I've never heard the argument being presented that way before, and again, it just feels that maybe media is jumping on to try and polarize or jumping on the two groups that you mentioned. But the way you presented it makes a lot of sense to me. So again, Ralph, thank you very much for your time today. We'll make sure there's links below the videos for everyone to go and connect or click through and connect with you. And again, I'll thank you for your insights. It's been incredible. I could talk to you all day, but I still have your time. So again, thank you for your time today.
My pleasure, Kieran. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for your time. And time is something that, Warren Buffett talks about. With all the money he has, he can't buy time. So he views that with a level of appreciation and respect, and I try to do as well. So thank you very much.